Emmanuel, a final-year student at the prestigious Abia State University, was a naturally introverted individual. His calm and quiet demeanor was not a facade, carefully crafted to conceal his involvement with the notorious Klansmen confraternity, but rather an inherent aspect of his personality. Emmanuel's preference for solitude was evident in his sparse social interactions on campus. Unlike many of his fellow students, he rarely attended parties or social gatherings, and when he did, he would often slip away unnoticed, leaving behind a trail of whispers and speculation. His introverted nature had become so synonymous with his persona that many students assumed he was aloof or standoffish. However, the truth was far more straightforward. Emmanuel simply preferred to keep to himself, finding solace in the quiet moments he spent reading, studying, or lost in thought. His natural inclination towards introversion was not a result of his involvement with the Klansmen, but rather a fundamental aspect of his personality that had been present long before he became embroiled with the organization. As a student, Emmanuel lived within the school campus, residing in one of the university's dormitories. His living quarters were modest, reflecting his unassuming nature. Despite being surrounded by the hustle and bustle of campus life, Emmanuel's introverted personality allowed him to maintain a sense of detachment, observing the world around him with a curious, yet reserved, eye. On occasion, Emmanuel would return home to his father's house, located in a quiet neighborhood not far from the university. These visits were a welcome respite from the demands of academic life, allowing Emmanuel to recharge and reconnect with his family. His father, a kind and wise man, had always encouraged Emmanuel's academic pursuits, unaware of his son's clandestine activities as the leader of the Klansmen confraternity. As the head of the Klansmen's deck at Abia State University, Emmanuel wielded significant power and respect within the organization. However, his leadership style was distinct from that of his predecessors. Unlike the more aggressive and volatile leaders who had come before him, Emmanuel adopted a more measured approach, preferring to maintain a low profile and avoid unnecessary confrontations. This approach had led some to question Emmanuel's commitment to the Klansmen's ideals, but those who knew him understood that his introverted nature belied a sharp mind and a deep understanding of the organization's inner workings. Emmanuel's ability to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries within the university's confraternity landscape was unparalleled, and his leadership had brought a measure of stability to the Klansmen's operations. Despite his involvement with the Klansmen, Emmanuel's academic life remained a priority. He was a diligent student, consistently earning high grades and impressing his professors with his insightful contributions to class discussions. His academic prowess had earned him a reputation as one of the university's brightest students, and his introverted nature only added to the enigma that surrounded him. As Emmanuel navigated the final year of his studies, he was acutely aware of the delicate balance he had struck between his academic life and his involvement with the Klansmen. It was a balancing act that required immense skill and cunning, and one that Emmanuel had mastered with ease. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Emmanuel couldn't shake the feeling that his world was about to be turned upside down. Emmanuel's decision to leave the Klansmen confraternity sent shockwaves throughout the campus of Abia State University. As the leader of the Klansmen's deck, Emmanuel's defection was seen as a monumental betrayal, one that would have far-reaching consequences for both the Klansmen and Emmanuel himself. The primary motivation behind Emmanuel's decision to abandon the Klansmen was his growing dissatisfaction with the organization's lack of power and influence within the institution. Despite his position as leader, Emmanuel had become increasingly frustrated with the Klansmen's limited reach and inability to exert significant control over campus affairs. His ambition and desire for dominance had grown beyond the confines of the Klansmen, leading him to seek out a more powerful and influential organization. It was this desire for power and prestige that ultimately led Emmanuel to join the Black Axe confraternity, a notorious cult group with a reputation for ruthlessness and brutality. The Black Axe confraternity was a behemoth of an organization, with a vast network of members and a formidable presence within the university. Their influence was palpable, and their power was unmatched. Emmanuel's decision to join the Black Axe was a calculated move, one that he believed would provide him with the influence and dominance he so desperately craved. The Klansmen, however, saw Emmanuel's defection as a treacherous act of betrayal. They had trusted him as their leader, and his sudden departure was a devastating blow to their organization. The Klansmen's leadership was quick to declare Emmanuel a traitor, issuing a declaration that he was wanted by the organization. However, despite their threats and declarations, the Klansmen were ultimately powerless to do much to Emmanuel. Their limited presence and influence within the university meant that they lacked the resources and manpower to effectively pursue Emmanuel. The Black Axe, on the other hand, provided Emmanuel with a level of protection and security that the Klansmen could only dream of. As a member of the Black Axe, Emmanuel was now part of a powerful and feared organization, one that would stop at nothing to defend its members. Emmanuel's transition to the Black Axe was seamless. He quickly became acquainted with the organization's orientations and traditions, embracing their values and principles with ease. The Black Axe's leadership was impressed with Emmanuel's intelligence and charisma, recognizing the potential benefits of having a former Klansman leader within their ranks. As Emmanuel settled into his new role within the Black Axe, he began to realize the true extent of the organization's power and influence. The Black Axe's reach was vast, with tentacles stretching into every aspect of university life. They controlled the flow of information, manipulated campus politics, and exerted a malign influence over the student body. Emmanuel's decision to join the Black Axe had been motivated by a desire for power and influence, and now he was beginning to realize the true extent of the organization's capabilities. As he became more deeply embroiled in the Black Axe's activities, Emmanuel couldn't help but wonder what the future held for him, and whether his decision to join the organization would ultimately prove to be a wise one. 3 months had passed since Emmanuel's defection to the Black Axe confraternity, and the campus of Abia State University had witnessed a period of relative calm. However, beneath the surface, tensions were simmering, waiting to erupt into violence. It was against this backdrop of unease that a tragic event occurred, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the Black Axe, the Vikings, and the entire university community. The incident began innocently enough, with a minor disagreement between members of the Black Axe and the Vikings, two of the most powerful and feared cult groups on campus. However, the dispute quickly escalated, fueled by the long-standing animosity between the two organizations. The situation took a deadly turn when a Viking member was allegedly assassinated, sparking outrage and grief within the Viking ranks. The campus was plunged into chaos as news of the assassination spread, with many students fearing for their safety. The Black Axe and the Vikings were at loggerheads, each side blaming the other for the violence. The tension between the two groups was palpable, with many predicting that the situation would deteriorate further. However, as the days turned into weeks, the matter seemed to die off, with both sides appearing to exercise restraint. But the fragile peace was short-lived. Another incident occurred, this time involving the violent collection of a Viking member's phone by a group of Black Axe members. It was unclear whether the Axemen had known that the individual they targeted was a Viking member, but the consequences of their actions were undeniable. The Vikings were outraged, demanding that the Black Axe return the phone and apologize for their actions. The Black Axe, aware of the volatile situation, agreed to return the phone, and a location was set for the handover. The meeting was tense, with both sides arriving with a heavy contingent of members. However, despite the animosity, the phone was returned successfully, and for a moment, it seemed as though the situation had been diffused. As the dust settled, a new group of Black Axe members arrived at the scene, their faces twisted with anger and frustration. Emmanuel was among them, his eyes flashing with a mixture of adrenaline and uncertainty. These latecomers were incensed by the fact that their fellow Axemen had returned the phone to the Vikings without exacting any form of revenge or compensation. The atmosphere was already tense, but the arrival of these stubborn Axemen sent the situation spiraling out of control. One of them, fueled by rage and a desire for violence, pulled out a locally made gun, its crude metal glinting in the fading light. The Vikings, anticipating a trap, had come prepared, and they swiftly responded to the threat. A hail of bullets ripped through the air, forcing the Black Axe members to flee for their lives. Emmanuel, caught in the crossfire, was hit by a stray bullet. He stumbled, his legs buckling beneath him, as his fellow Axemen deserted him, leaving him to face the Vikings alone. The Vikings, sensing victory, closed in on Emmanuel, their guns trained on him. A burst of gunfire, and Emmanuel's body slumped to the ground, his life slipping away with each fading breath. The Vikings, their anger sated, melted away into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of destruction and death. The police, alerted to the violence, arrived soon after, and a frantic search ensued for the perpetrators. One of the Viking members was eventually apprehended, his fate a stark reminder of the consequences of cultism. As the news of Emmanuel's death spread, a pall of gloom settled over the campus. The Black Axe, reeling from the loss of one of their own, vowed to exact revenge on the Vikings. But amidst the cycle of violence and retaliation, a sobering truth emerged: Emmanuel's death was a senseless tragedy, a preventable loss of life that served as a stark reminder of the dangers of cultism. Emmanuel's story, a cautionary tale of the devastating consequences of cultism, would live on, a haunting reminder of the devastating price he paid for his involvement with the Black Axe. His death, a tragic waste of a young life, would serve as a warning to others, a poignant reminder of the importance of rejecting the false promises of cultism and embracing a path of peace, tolerance, and understanding. The message, clear and unequivocal, echoed through the corridors of Abia State University: say no to cultism.